Good.
All right, I am calling November 1st, Village of Cross Plains Land Commission regular meeting to order. Roll call, please.
President Jay Lentfeld,
Here.
Trustee Shelby,
Here.
Commissioner Duquette,
Here.
Commissioner Garcia,
Here.
Commissioner Johnson,
Here.
Commissioner Gertland is not here. Trustee Brosius.
Here. For a public comment, this is an opportunity for anyone to address the plan commission on any issue. Please observe the time limit of 3 minutes, while the plan commission encourages. It may not discuss or act on any issue that is not duly noticed on the agenda. Do we have anybody, Bill?
I did not have any pre-registrations for the public comment section.
All right. So we will go to general business. Approval of the minutes from the October 4th, 2021 Plan Commission meeting. Do I have a motion? Motion to approve the minutes. Do I have a second? All right, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the minutes? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same. All right. Do I have a motion to go into public hearing for a petition to rezone lot 70 to 77 of Creek Crossing subdivision for a planned development district with an underlying district of duplex residential 6?
Also motion.
Roll call vote, please.
Fine, I'll second it.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right, roll call vote.
Okay, Trustee Shelby,
Yes.
Commissioner Duquette,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Trustee Brosius,
Yes.
President Lentfeld,
Yes.
and Commissioner Gertland. We're all going into open session.
No, into public hearing.
Sorry.
Right. All right, so we're at public hearing. Is there anybody that would like to speak at the public hearing on this rezone? Anybody on the computer?
So I have two on the Zoom here. I have Matt Schreiner, who represents the developer. Jeff is the developer also here. And then we have Michael Palmkowski, members that are present. I don't see any hands raised here.
All righty. Then do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. You're out. All right, number 3, discussion and possible action regarding the petition to rezone lots 70 to 77 as Creek Crossing subdivision for a planned development district with an underlying district of duplex residential 6. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the rezoning of lot 70 through 77 in the Creek Crossing subdivision by the planned development district for underlying district of duplex residence 6.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion and second. Any discussion? Just,
Well, I was gonna say, do you want a short update? And then, I mean,
well, I guess we had this at the last meeting as a conceptual. Why don't you just tell us if there's any changes between the conceptual and that?
yeah, so there were no changes between the conceptual plan and this plan after it was recommended for approval by the plan commission. It did go to the village board and was approved on a 6-1 vote. And so since then, the next step would be for the plan, for the public hearing, we held at the plan commission. That was just done. And so at this step is recommending the zoning, which is the general development plan with an underlying DR6 district over to the village board, and they will then decide or make a motion to approve or deny the zoning on these lots.
Okay, that's what we have on right now. That's our motion and our second. All right, any other discussion or questions? Let's do a roll call vote.
All right. Trustee Brosis,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Bjorklund,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia,
Yes.
Commissioner Duquette,
Yes.
Trustee Caldeir,
Yes.
President Langford.
Yes. Motion carries. All right, discussion and possible action regarding specific implementation plan for lots 70 through 77 and Creek Crossing subdivision. We have a motion.
I'll motion to approve the specific implementation plan for lot 70 to 77. Crossing subdivision.
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Discussion. Bill, you want to say anything on this?
Yeah, so this is the next step in this process. So after the zoning is granted, the specific implementation includes how do we get from zoning to the actual project. So things like the floor plan, landscaping, site plan, colors, all the specifics about how to get the project to final stage is this step. And so again, the details have been provided since the conceptual stage because they wanted to fast track these two and put them together. And so same as the general development plan. After the planning commission makes a decision on this and recommends, it would go to the village board.
And Ben, you've looked at this and you're okay with it?
Yeah, it's reflective of what we saw at the last meeting, and I think it's a newer model that is time and tested throughout Dane County. This might be the first application of it in Cross Plains, but this is a very common modern style of development. And I think we're going to see more of it moving forward.
Very good. Any other discussion, comments, questions? All right, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Duquette,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia,
Yes.
Commissioner Bjorklund,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Trustee Brosis,
Yes.
Trustee Caldeir,
Yes.
President Langfeld.
Yes. All right. So I need a motion to go into public hearing for a petition from 2020 Main Street LLC for a conditional use permit to allow for outdoor commercial entertainment at 2020 Main Street, Cross Plains.
So
I have a second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Let's open up for discussion. Before we start, I just want everybody here to know this will be our first time where this is solely the responsibility of this commission. This will not go to the board. It's a conditional use, and that's the state statute has provided that all to this. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that this is the final here.
Well, this is just for public hearing.
Yes, it is. But this topic, I just want to make sure everybody is aware of that. All right, is there anybody that would like to speak at the public?
Actually, motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I do it?
You said you had a motion and a second.
All right, a roll call vote. I thought I called a roll call vote, but maybe, okay, roll call vote.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Bjorklund,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia,
yes.
Commissioner Duquette,
Yes.
Trustee Caldeir,
Yes.
Trustee Brochus.
Yep.
President Langfeld.
Yes. All right, we're public hearing. Wow. All right, is there anybody here to speak about on,
We do have the all property owners here, if you want a presentation on what is being proposed, otherwise the site plan and documents are submitted in your packet.
I guess if it's okay, I'd rather have that discussion at the next one.
Sure.
Then we aren't mixing things this way. We're good? All right, anybody else? Does anybody on your computer want to speak at the public hearing?
The only one I got is Michael Ponkowski. Michael, did you want to say something about this?
All right. So do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye. Opposed, same. All right. Discussion and possible action regarding the petition from 2020 Main Street LLC for a conditional use permit to allow for outdoor commercial entertainment at 2020 Main Street, Cross Plains, Wisconsin. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve the petition for 2020 Main LLC, the conditional use permit to allow outdoor commercial entertainment at 2020 Main Street in Cross Plains.
All right, do I have a second?
Second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We're at discussion. Now, if you looked in your packet, there are some procedural things we have to do. Let's get to where I have it, because I've got to make sure it's covered. All right, so we have our meeting. It would be on page PDF 72. We're already on to D. Since we've had no testimony, we'll hear from people who are presenting the application. So I guess give a summary of what you have, because what you want to do is kind of give an overview and some details on what you're asking, because then we have to approve that it's evidence and testimony, and then we approve the actual conditional.
Okay.
It's kind of new. This is the first one, so I'm trying to find my way through
Well,
this.
maybe guinea pigs then.
Yeah.
My name is Katie Rich, and this is my husband Dale Rich, and we own 2020, which used to be called Market Square, or Market Street Square, I think, which is the building that the coffee shop and Keat Botanicals and now Honeysuckle and Squire. We intend to put the Creekside Scoop, which is going to be candy and ice cream in the southwest corner of the building. So Sisters on Main used to be housed in that entire back half of the southern half of the building, but it was always intended for 2 rental spots. So Honeysuckle and Spry is the new florist in town, and they are on the northwest corner, and the southwest corner, southwest will be the Creekside Scoop. So what we're proposing is outdoor commercial, I'm gonna get this wrong, outdoor commercial entertainment conditional use permit, so that we will be able to have that concrete patio deck, be able to serve ice cream, play music, do outdoor movies. The intention is the green space next to the property, or which is owned by Rick and Tony Esser right now, will be extended green space for our building. So Crossroads and the Creekside Scoop and anybody that's renting space in there will be able to use the outdoor space. So you'll see that we replaced the glass exit door there. In orange, there are 2 windows that will match the rest of the building, so they're the same size, same size as the other windows, and then there's a sliding ADA door that will be the entrance to the Creekside Scoop, and then there's a shared emergency exit there, so Honeysuckle and Spry uses that as an emergency exit as will we. So the deck is there now and will remain the same height. I think that was one of the questions. So will remain the same height, and actually this does not include it, but it will wrap around the back of the building through the setback. So I'm sorry I didn't draw that in, but we'll retain all of the setbacks required. I think it will be like 8 feet off the building, 8 feet, which is less than the setback requires. So we'll be able to utilize the view of the creek right there. And then stairs off of that, off of the deck. And then the yellow is a fence, so we'd like to run a fence along the sidewalk. And Bill was able to come and take a look at that. We'd like to run a fence along the sidewalk with gates that come into Crossroads and into Keat and extend it to the end of the patio, which in turn will extend all the way down Ricky Tony's property on the Main Street side of the bill. So we're gonna match our fence. It will be the same fence all the way along. And that is, so we'll be able to serve alcohol, so that will be fenced in to match the requirements for that. So the intention is to just have basically outdoor entertainment.
I just have one quick, the fencing that goes along the front of the building? That, between,
Our fencing?
well, isn't that in the front?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, yeah. I thought you meant like existing.
Oh, no. So you're gonna have the fence go in front of your building to separate it from the side, basically the sidewalk. Have you thought about maybe using temporary fencing? I mean, you can use the same fence, kind of like what they do downtown Madison, enclosed. That way in the winter you could, when you're not using it, you could move it and it'd be easier for snow removal.
You mean when we have events and things that, when we have alcohol, that we would just use it temporarily?
Yeah, I mean, they pretty much have it up all summer, but in the middle of winter, they remove it so they can.
We did not consider that. I'm not totally opposed to that.
No, I'm just throwing that out there, that it might be a convenience for you to do something, and they really have, it looks permanent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
And that would allow us to do it, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be permanent. Is that how?
That's not how I think as long as it's fenced in, that's what is required.
Great.
I mean, obviously we'd want it to match.
No, yeah, no, I understand that.
But I just
I mean,
thought,
that sort of lends itself to, like, we could have big pots and flowers and then put temporary fencing in between it.
yeah, this,
Yeah, I never thought, I thought it had to be permanent, so.
yeah, I don't believe so. I mean, that's not, when I read it, I didn't see that it had to be, and I know that's what they've been doing in Madison a lot.
Okay.
Just, it seems like it's very convenient.
Yeah, I agree.
For cleaning and for snow removal and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
I would just throw that out there now. Anybody else? So,
I guess I have questions about the use of the adjoining lot. Is that, because that's not listed in our.
That would be a separate, conditional use permit for that.
Okay, so we're only focusing
We're
on.
only focusing on this property here.
That's what I wanted to check. I was talking
Yeah, so
about-
if that's the case, then if we can have temporary fencing until we figure out what the conditional use permit is for the adjoining property and our lease situation, we would just put temporary fencing all the way down the concrete patio. Does that make sense? So it would just, that sort of solves our problem.
Yeah, I don't think that the code, and Ben, you can correct me if I'm wrong, specifies the difference between a temporary fence and our complete permit. I think what we want to understand is for the site plan purposes, and the implementation of the site plan, what type of fencing is going to be used, so that we can expect that in the future, and if we do get any complaints saying that it's not in compliance, we can point to it and say, this is what the plan is.
Bill,
So a couple questions about the entertainment that you're looking to do. I saw in the packet that you want to do live music, you want to do movies. Can you kind of expand that, what you're looking for? Are you talking electronic music, acoustical music, for outside, or what?
I mean, I wouldn't want to limit ourselves and say it would only be acoustic, right? So we might have a 3-piece band up there
Sure.
for, outdoor live music in the summers. As for outdoor movies, we would put a projector up and a screen and let people sit and watch an outdoor movie, until
I love
dusk,
that.
basically. What's that?
I love that.
Yeah. So nothing loud, nothing crazy. I mean, we're not talking about DJs out here, right? We're talking about live music that you'd see at Trout Days or on the 1909 patio or whatever. A lot of them have amplifiers, but nothing crazy.
So with the conditional use, do we need to do the same thing we did for 1909 and specify hours of outdoor music operation and all that?
Well, I thought we didn't do that. I thought we went to ordinance,
Yeah,
so everybody would be treated equally. That's,
So we know we can't go after 10 o'clock.
I thought it was in ordinance now.
It could be,
I thought we tried to clean that up because we didn't want exactly this. Montagues has one time, 1909 and now 2020 and coaches. So I thought we went to an ordinance.
Yes.
And the ordinance is 10 o'clock, correct?
Yeah. All right, well,
well, I thought last week we did discuss noise ordinance was at 9 o'clock. You guys changed it, I thought.
no, 9 o'clock was for construction.
Well, construction and ATVs and UTVs is 8 o'clock, and so what is the actual noise ordinance?
Well, the noise, yeah, there's one about me, it's a separate ordinance.
That one is 10. I think so.
Yeah, I can't, I don't have them all memorized. I know there's a lot of times, but you're right, we changed the construction one. That was the only one that we talked about last time. And that went from 9 to 8, correct?
But even the noise level on that bill is in that ordinance. So what kind of music or the level of that is all in that ordinance.
correct, yeah,
That's all in.
it regulates general noise and then specific noise in regards to radios, amplified loudspeakers, and then we also have a licensing permitting process that allows for amplified music. So that is be covered within our code.
Okay. I just wanted to see if we, didn't want to skip it.
Right, no.
No.
Yeah.
And that's one of my biggest concerns, amplified music.
Yeah.
I don't need to hear it in my house at 11 o'clock. And that's why a lot of that changed, I think.
Well, I think we tried,
To clean it up.
to clean it up so everybody's treated equally and not dependent upon the board what they thought was reasonable.
So if you're looking at amplified music, so looking from Main Street south, is the music gonna be directed, what direction do you think the music is gonna be directed? Towards the crib or towards
The
north part of, or
Well, from our patio, we don't have a designated area. So if we have to have a designated area, I guess that's the question.
No, I'm just saying, which way do you think, so, if you get a three-piece band, set up are they gonna set up on the north side facing south, or on the east side facing west?
Yeah, so if it's from our patio, likely it would be from the north side facing south. However, on Rick Tony's property, they're talking about, and again, this is like a little bit further down the line.
Sure,
It, facing north from the southwest corner of that property.
okay. Okay, I'm fine with
Yeah,
that.
no, that's fine. I don't know how much, these guys have renderings of their proposed property. I don't know if people want to see it.
We hope to have it on the agenda, but we just got it today at
Sure.
11, so didn't really work out.
So, if the render, I don't know about.
Yeah.
It's
kind of separated, so
I don't want to confuse anybody.
Right, I don't think that, this is gonna be confusing enough, so we don't focus on this, but I think the understanding here, you don't have a designated, it's gonna depend on who's playing what, and then in the future, what business next to you, how you can cooperate with each other.
Right.
Yeah.
The intention is that their property will be green space and where the entertainment is,
Yeah.
basically. And everybody on our patio will get the benefit of enjoying.
So for like a child day event, you might have the whole side of your building as your stage area and the green space as the city.
Correct.
So,
And vice versa.
yeah.
All right, any other questions that everybody has? All right, now, we're gonna go through this, so right now, it seems backwards to me on how this is, says I have to do it, but we have right now a motion to approve the conditional use permit, subject to the findings and conditions. So we have that on the table, so, this, it doesn't say I have to do a roll call, but the next two will. So let's do a roll call on this. Bill, we're gonna be 3 of these total.
Yeah.
I don't think they're in the right order, how this is laid out.
Okay, so the current motion is to approve or recommend the petition for conditional use permit to allow for outdoor commercial entertainment at 2020 Main Street.
To recommend or to approve?
To approve.
To approve, excuse me, sorry about that. Just want to make sure that I captured that correctly, and that was a motion by trustee Brochus and seconded by Commissioner Johnson. All right, Commissioner Bjorklund,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia,
Yes.
Commissioner Duquette,
Yes.
trustee Caldeir,
Yes.
trustee Brochus,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
and President Langfeld.
Yes. Now, here's what it says here now, the planning commission chair calls a roll call vote for the approval or denial of the findings and conditions. So I will say, make a motion to approve the findings and conditions. Do I have a second? All right, any discussion?
So you made a motion.
Yeah, I made the motion because that's what it says here. I think this is backwards. I think we should be doing the findings and then we do the permit, then we do them both together, but that's not the order that this says. I'm on I, which said we have to approve. Now I'm at J. So let's just follow this, but I think these are in the wrong order.
Okay.
Right? Doesn't it? Okay, so the motion and the second, any discussion?
So the finding of the conditions,
You technically, from the public hearing and their statement, you listen, it's like an evidentiary hearing, right? If someone came in and said something that was bizarre, I can say that's not evidence, you don't take that into consideration. So we hear what's there, right? That's the findings part of it. And then the conditions we agree with is what they're asking for. So to me, you should do that first, and then the conditional use permit, but I don't know.
The way that it's listed is confusing, but that, I think that's how you're supposed to do it. I think
All right.
I listed it, that, just as a blank statement states that the planning commission must make one of these motions, but doesn't necessarily say that it come before J or K. So,
Oh,
I read it just that I says you must make a motion on all. It doesn't say you have to vote on the motion and step I, it says you have to make a motion for one of those things.
Correct.
I think K is where we actually approve.
correct.
right, but if you make a motion, you gotta take action. You cannot have a motion and a second and a discussion and not take action. So you have to take action. So
We're taking action in K.
I think we're okay with just the two motions, and the two votes, because the plan commission has already voted on the approval of the conditional use permit. That's already done.
that's what I think. So too.
It's already done, and then to shore things up, just the motion and the second, and then the vote on the findings and conditions.
Okay, so that's on the table right now. Any discussion on that part of it?
Who made that?
I did. Okay, Judy second. No discussion, roll call vote.
Commissioner Garcia,
Yes.
Commissioner Bjorklund,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
trustee Brochus,
Yes.
trustee Caldeir,
Yes.
Commissioner Duquette,
Yes.
and President Langfeld.
Yes. All right. So you don't think we need to do K
You
then?
already voted on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
We did K.
I
Well, that's three in Casey.
think it's, you make a motion, because the motion doesn't have to be that we're approve it, we could motion to add conditions. And if the motion is to add conditions, then we vote on those conditions before we come back and vote on the whole package together. So I think
You're good.
we.
So the first motion should have been, if we either postpone the decision to recommend
That's
or,
one.
or
You add, remove,
or approve a conditional use permit
permit.
subject to finding conditions, which is
Or
exactly the same thing as
I
K.
thought
and basically the same as J.
Well, no, the choice is if you do one,
Because you already have a building.
J and K don't apply.
If you do it now.
No, one,
If you do two,
no, I would disagree, if you do, yeah,
if you do two, then you have to
It's your meeting.
approve findings and conditions, because you have to say what the conditions are,
right,
and then approve those. And then, once you approve any conditions, then you come back and.
yeah, I like, to me, I think we should always approve the findings and conditions first,
Yes,
and then do the permit.
yes.
That's how,
We may choose, I think number 3 is to just,
skip it all?
well, no, 3 is to approve it subject to the findings.
Wait, left, not again.
No, I'm just trying for us in the future, how we're gonna do this, that makes sense to
I
them.
think depending on what we do in the motion, the first motion, we don't have to vote on it, but then. I have a motion, so then you
No,
do
you-
J, and you do K.
You have to vote.
You gotta vote.
But that's what K is.
But that's just, we'll talk about it, somehow,
The motion on the permit came early, and before that motion should have been a discussion on the I items, the postponement, the conditions, if there are any conditions.
and I think, but my big, I'm fine with that. But when you have 3 in there, to me, 3 includes both J and K.
It does. Yeah. But that's what I think I is saying. I is not saying that procedurally you have to complete I before completing J and K.
Right.
It's just saying overall, once you conduct a public hearing, you must take action in one of these matters.
The only thing I can add is, so if someone makes an amendment to approve something at the village board, or makes a motion to approve something, but then someone offers an amendment during that process, you vote on the amendment
Yep.
before you vote on the final thing. So I view that the same way. It's just because someone made a motion to approve something, doesn't mean the very next vote has to be approve it. You have.
No, but that's the other thing, you're amending a motion, we would be taking up a whole new motion. There is no amendment to it.
It's.
That, I mean, yeah, that makes.
Conditions are part of, that's the way
I don't know, we'll talk this out and figure it out, it just it didn't seem like.
Let me be just as confused next time.
No, well, because I think next time I'm going to make sure findings and conditions are
I
approved.
mean, I agree with you, that should be first, because we just approved something, now if we would deny the findings and conditions, is it legal because we already approved their conditions?
And I think what I'm gonna do is I'm only gonna use 1 and 2, then we'll just go to J and K. That's what I think. That would make
Well, I
sense
think
to
you
me.
need to put in 1 and 2 is optional, and
Oh, yeah,
I think they still need to be in there for the,
oh, no, I'm saying they're in there, but 3 doesn't make any sense to me.
okay,
I would go, you need to have 1 and 2 for someone who wants to postpone it,
right,
or you wanna add, remove, or alter the conditions, you want that decided. And then you go into the findings and conditions,
Yep.
and then you approve the permit.
Yep.
That's how I think, I think 3 confused me a little bit.
Yep.
So, all right, well, we made it through it.
We think.
We thank you, well, it's done now, there's no one going back now, so. It is what it is. All right, discussion and possible action regarding chapter 84 zoning code. We'll start with A.
Right, I think I'll let you hear from here. Just a quick, so as part of the land use table discussion, these items were proposed as possible changes to the code. And so that's provided the language here suggested for your review.
Right, so we're still working on the park zoning district, working with Mike Axon on that. And so potentially that might come to the next meeting, but these were the other 2 that were quick models that I had on hand that I wanted to bring before the commission here this evening to kind of talk about, because it's a lot harder to kind of envision what the land use language would be without actually seeing something written down. And so what I did is I took the approach of taking one of our more strict versions of the model ordinance as a starting point. We do not have to follow this verbatim. The kind of key opportunity here is we can utilize a licensing requirement, or we can not utilize a licensing requirement, similar to how the chicken coop or bee situation is handled. Some communities choose to require a license for a short-term Airbnb type rental. There is obviously an administrative component that runs with that in terms of not only tracking these, but also having people come into Village Hall and apply for that licensing, things like that. On the flip side of that, it gives the village more control, obviously, versus if we do just utilize it as a land use itself with no licensing requirement, it will be permitted by right in each dwelling unit, but we can still have some kind of property maintenance requirements, which in all reality is only going to come before to the village on a complaint basis. So it's basically, do we want to take a proactive kind of administrative control approach, or do we want to take a kind of wait until a complaint situation arrives and then address it that way approach? And if right now it isn't an issue, maybe we too take the kind of complaint-based approach right now and address it more administratively in the future if it does become an issue. I know both Madison and some of those surrounding communities, it is an issue, so they enforce it through a license and that kind of thing at a more administrative level. But if that's not the case here, we can take a different approach. So kind of want to provide opportunities here to look at what a licensing approach would look like. So that is what you see there in number 2 in terms of the land use requirement. A is the annual village license. And so you'd have to renew that in order to operate an Airbnb within the community. And you'd have to kind of sign off on some of these different components of keeping track of who is renting the facility and those types of things.
Hey, Ben?
Yeah.
Can I pause you for a second?
Mhm.
So when you said Madison and some of the outlying areas from Madison, it is an issue, what does that mean? What kind of issue are you seeing?
I can tell you some on for it. What happens is that people who buy property then rent it for this, they don't keep control, they just take the money in. So
Absentee landlordship.
yeah, kind of like that. So you get people going in there that have parties, drug use, drug sales. They have been very disruptive in residential neighborhoods.
Okay.
So the licensing then affords us to revoke the license and then actually take enforcement on it. So for that in Madison, as someone who had neighborhoods really having problems with that, that's exactly. And then in Madison, you have to, the person who owns a house is supposed to be there a certain number of days, and that wasn't happening either. And it's just hard to enforce something if you don't have a license to enforce.
So what's the difference between that and, let's say, a four room or four building apartment complex?
Well, there's landlord, we have all kinds of ordinances that govern landlords. The difference is you have a person there, and then that's just another process that we work with the landlord to clean up, and we give them 5-day notice, we give them 30-day notice.
Sure, but the landlord doesn't have to live in a car.
No, but that's.
It's the length of how long the person is staying there. So in a rental situation where you're renting an apartment, it's a longer term lease, where these are inherently a shorter period of time in which you're renting that, and it's more along the lines of a commercial type operation than it would be a residential oriented type.
Okay.
And it's like, kind of like a motel, basically.
Yes.
The difference is, hotel managers have powers to remove people from their rooms and stuff. But think about it, if you're a drug dealer, you rent a house next to you for 3 days, right? And you sell drugs out of your house, and then they move to another place where you have a big wild party there. I mean, it's very disruptive to neighbors.
Sure. Okay.
I would say the most common thing that I've seen is that it's like long bachelor party or game day weekend, and you just go and make a lot of noise and cause a disturbance to a neighborhood. And that's what Madison runs into, is that kind of situation. Same with like the village of Shorewood Hills. People are renting it just for game day weekends, and then they party in the front yard in the neighborhood and cause a disturbance to the regular residents who live there more full time. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're the one trying to control.
I personally would think we should do the licensing on this particular one, yeah. Absolutely. It gives you a little bit of control.
Yeah, and the fee associated with that, it could be the deterrent enough to say, I'm not gonna rent out my space to an Airbnb because I have to pay the village some nominal amount of money or whatever, so. And then, I mean, we still wanna have requirements related to, you know, where people are parking, being on the site, and following, you know, the noise ordinance and property maintenance. We don't necessarily want a bunch of signs on the front of the building saying this is an Airbnb versus what it would look like a typical kind of home. And so those are very typical components that we would advocate for even without the license per se. But the license is that added level of control, in particular because of what you're talking about. If there is an issue, it's very easy to revoke a license versus trying to go the other route.
What is the penalty if they just choose to do it and not get a license?
We'd have to look, I'm sure there's, we have some ordinance that says if you don't get a license, there's
Yeah.
a penalty. I mean,
Yeah, we have a general catch-all that the zoning refers to as chapter 1 of the code. It's a general fee structure, and then, you know, every day you're in violation, simple violation.
It's a daily fine and violation, yes. But in all reality, you know, you're not gonna get every single one of them. They turn over and they change, and a lot of times you could go online today and look and say, oh, there's none available in Cross Plains, and then tomorrow there could be 3. You know, it's just one of those things that changes very, very frequently. So most likely that kind of fine or violation would only come about in a complaint-based scenario, unless the village is kind of actively tracking Airbnbs, which I don't know if you guys have the time to necessarily do, but.
We don't have any right now.
Okay.
there we go.
So we don't. Well, we have one permitted, but they haven't done the implementation.
Just so I have all the information, if we didn't go the permit route.
Yeah.
And we went enforcing via complaints, like how does that work then? Like people complain, like how do we take action on the complaints then if those were to come?
Yeah, it would be very similar to how any kind of complaint-based scenario works. They would come to the village and say, for instance, maybe an example would be somebody's parking an inoperable vehicle in their front yard, and Bill receives a complaint by that. He looks at the zoning ordinance to say, you're not allowed to park an inoperable vehicle in your front yard, you're in violation. And then he or the building inspector, somebody issues a kind of complaint letter to the property owner, and then there's actions following.
It's a long enough process where the people are probably gone already.
Well, it inherently falls on the property owner if they're renting it out, what happens during that time, because the state does require you to get I think it's an operating permit or something through the state to do short-term residential rentals. So inherently, you have to go through those steps to get to that part of it.
And then if it's noise, hopefully they would call when the noise is going on, and then we deal with it like any other noise complaint. It's much harder with drugs, but by the time we get the complaint, they've already moved out with it.
Right.
Yeah, obviously, we'd have to base it off of evidence.
But you're using separate ordinances versus the rules that follow that license. That's why it's easier.
Okay.
Do we have a village room tax? I just saw it. So I don't know if that would be something that we might license out if we would.
I don't think it'd be enough to justify the administrative costs and stuff.
Yeah, I believe room tax is needed to own specific.
Yeah.
I just saw
No,
it.
That was as a byproduct of the model, yeah. I can take that out. So we don't have to take action on this evening. It could be a part of the overall changes, or if you do feel comfortable enough, we can't, no, we can't, never mind. So we have to have a public hearing, I'm sorry.
But everybody I just, so Ben, is everybody comfortable with the licensing route or?
I just have one question,
Go ahead.
and this is new to me, so I just apologize.
Mhm.
So let's say you have a person that has a house and they want to rent half of it. You know, let's say they want to rent. I guess they have it upstairs, they have it on Main Street. Someone, they remodeled their house. They made a second floor rental and they're the owners in the file. Would this apply to that?
No, that is a rental.
That's a long-term.
Yeah, that falls in. Generally on these, you have a restriction of, I think, 3 days on a lot of them.
This says 7, I think.
Or 7.
It's, you can't do it for more than 180 days in a calendar year.
Okay.
So,
Rental period to a minimum of 7 consecutive days for one party.
Okay, there you go.
Okay.
and that's if you want to take that route, that'd be more restrictive in terms of requiring a rental for a full week period of time. You don't have to necessarily do that. I would recommend the 180 days maximum for the year. Then you try to hopefully avoid them just buying spec property to do Airbnbs the whole time.
What does a typical license fee cost? Now there.
That I do not know off the top of my head. Not exactly sure. I would imagine it's some formula based off of kind of the estimated time for processing. So I don't know what the village does for those like chicken coop licenses, for example.
Yeah, we do $75 for chicken, or $50 for the chicken, and it's the same amount. It again depends on whether or not there's a hearing involved or what goes into whole administration of the license itself. So, and then depending on who does that. So,
And that's something I think we could look up, check with communities that have a license.
and the village board actually adopts an annual resolution, a key resolution, so we can change it throughout. So there's some flexibility here, and I think between the directions tonight and the planning commission and those board adopting the final, that information.
Well,
Actually brings up a good question, is other communities that do this, do any of them have a requirement, like with this, let's say someone wanted to apply for this license, would there have to be a public hearing or an opportunity for neighbors to comment on it before the license gets approved or anything?
No, we're kind of hamstrung by the state statutes on that one. They basically said in whatever it was, 2018, I think, that you have to allow them in legal dwelling units in your city. And so they kind of stripped a lot of the ability to regulate them through kind of a more typical zoning approach, which would be a conditional use in a lot of cases. Instead, we're kind of having to take an alternative where it's the licensing approach, but no, there would be no public hearing required.
So basically, it's just the conditions like the 6 that are listed. We just have this, if they meet those requirements, you basically have to grant the license.
Yes, and they're also on the flip side of our enforcement ability is based on those requirements, yeah.
right. Ben, you think you got enough?
Yeah, the only thing was, do we want to have a minimum rental period or not? Most recently I've done a couple of code rewrites in Jefferson County, and they didn't want to do the minimum. Madison being a different animal, and they did want a minimum. So I don't know if that's something of interest here or not.
We don't really have hotels or motels here, so if someone is willing to have an Airbnb, and people come for truck days or whatever,
Right.
it'd be nice if they could stay just the weekend and not have to buy a whole week to partake in that kind of thing. So I think I would not be 7 days seems like a long minimum.
Mhm.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I think with the additional licensing requirement, you're gonna have a lot more control over that particular situation.
There are a number that people feel comfortable with.
I'm open to just not having them. I mean, to me, I think if they get much over 180 days and it's, especially if it's the same person, you're in a whole different category of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So my thing the nice thing about having a limit is you worry about someone buying a house and instead of renting it out for a year, they rent it out by the week or something like that, and now you got a lot of turnover in someone's neighborhood. That's the only nice thing about putting some restrictions on it. It kind of avoids that a little bit.
Mhm.
So the way it's written, they have to designate a 180-day period, that's the only time that they're allowed to operate this during the year.
No, I think you start in January and you end December 31st, and you do 180 days in between.
Well, this one says which must be consecutive. 3A says the total number of days within a calendar year shall not exceed 180 days, which must be consecutive. So, yeah, you would be correct on that. It would be when you designate the start to finish, which we could obviously tweak that if you would be more open to 180 days limited, but it could be any time during the calendar year.
Yeah, that's what I thought that meant. Okay.
Well, it's in 2A1 as well.
Yeah.
It says, the period up, they have to fill out this form, which designates this 180-day period. So I read that, it's when they apply for this, they basically have to say, I'm gonna go from this date to this date, that's what I'm applying for, to operate within those.
Yeah,
6 months.
which must be consecutive
Right.
languages.
So essentially, like, they have to tell us, I'm gonna go from April 15th to October 15th. That's the only time that I can operate.
That's not how I read this. Is you can do 180 days, but your calendar year has to be consecutive. You can't say January to March and then this to the next year. It has to be, a whole calendar year, 12 months solid. You can do 180 days. Because you wouldn't get you wouldn't get. The whole idea of these things are not to rent them out every day for 180 days. It's generally people use it when they're gone or they have a spare bedroom and they have someone come for the weekend and stuff. So I see how you read it, but I was thinking that was talking about the calendar year, that you can't break up your calendar year. It's got to be a solid calendar year. Well, anyways,
either way, which way do we want to go? We can tweak the language either way.
I think they should declare a calendar year that can do 180 days in that calendar year.
I agree. About this flexibility.
Yeah.
So do you want to have them have a licensing start on July 1st, the next person comes in, they can start theirs on March 1st, the next person can start theirs on January 1st? Or do you want to make it January through December?
Well, I don't know, that's how I've never heard of your licensing period is from January, whatever your calendar year is. Just like our liquor licenses, the state requires it July 1st to June 30th.
Right.
It is what it is, so, but I think most of ours are yearly, right?
Yeah.
January,
So why would you have to declare what year you're going to do it, if all of our licenses start in January, you start up in June, you have to start paying that in January, correct?
I'm just saying, I was reading it, what I'm saying is, I would be very comfortable with this just being a license from January 1st to December 31st. In that time period, you can do 180 days.
I agree with that.
That's how I would do it. Keep it like the rest of our licenses.
So someone couldn't come in and do like April 1st to the end of March.
No, they would be, technically, April 1st to December 31st, they got 180 days, and then they. That's how I would do it.
Yeah, let's think about enforcement. I mean, if we would enforce it on a complaint basis, so technically. I mean, if someone was out there that was doing it in a license, was doing it out of those dates, and there was some complaints, then technically there would be no enforcement.
Right. But if someone complained, then that would give you some initiative to call and say, hey, do you realize you can only do 180 days? And we're hearing that it's a lot more, and then there will be neighbors that'll keep track.
Yeah.
No.
Well, if there's a problem.
I can think of a couple already.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about whether or not at the permitting process, and we can discuss this later about how we implement this, but do we want them to designate the specific days beforehand or not?
No.
Because then how do you track?
Yeah, and it's too much administrative work for you, because these are, the idea of this whole system is, when you're gone, you let someone use your house and get some money for it. So it's just, you may not have the whole.
Calendar year plan.
Yeah, exactly, you may be going, and then all of a sudden you find someone who'd like to be here for some wedding or something.
Well, I think that's just the village in a hard spot, because if you have someone that complains and says, okay, they're over 180 days, I think we can track. And then you have the owner say, well, it's not 180 days, I think you can track. It's both hearsay, how do you enforce that and deal with that? I guess it's from my.
Well,
That's what we did that all the time. It's always, what the best you can do is remind everybody what the rules are, and that now it's on notice and there's a.
That's the next step.
Yeah.
That 180 days is just to hopefully make sure someone is renting out the property the entire year.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So that just getting it out when they're gone. Stuff.
It's to avoid the speculative buyer, hopefully.
Yeah, I guess the other option would be, if it becomes an issue, then we don't.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is a good starting point, and yeah, test it out for a couple of years, and if we need to make changes, go for it.
Seth, did you want to say something?
Number 4. Says, does not exceed the total number licensed by the state of Wisconsin, so you said they have to to do this, they have to get a license from the state anyway. Do you know how they calculate that
What do you mean?
maximum occupancy, because we're basically saying they have to go with the lesser of either how many are their license from the state says, or 2 per bedroom plus 2 additional occupants, whichever is less. I just didn't know how the state calculates that.
No, I don't. All I knew is that they're required to go through the state to get a license, and I think that's something related to like a health and safety code. But no, I don't know what that specifies.
And I mean, I'd like to add this, whichever is less, because that might help avoid kind of the party house thing. Like, we're gonna get 40 people to come here in this little house.
Right.
I think they do it on square footage and bathrooms.
If I remember the problem once, we tried to put a stake out to it.
That's, I think, part of the formula.
Well, I will make those revisions and bring that together with the whole packet when we do that kind of more large scale amendments, like the table we talked about last week. So then the other one was related to these temporary uses. I had mentioned that kind of how it's written right now, we have a temporary storage container, but it says it's only allowed for residential properties. So in theory, we don't allow any sort of temporary non-residential storage container on site, which you brought up that the school district was already doing something like this. And so we should address it not only for that instance, but also to avoid an instance where we get kind of a long-term maybe shipping container or something that's just sitting out front of a building and we don't have any way to enforce or regulate that in any way. And based on what I've seen, because building materials are so expensive right now, a lot of people are going to these alternative approaches with the shipping container or the old semi-trailer or whatever it might be to store something because they just don't have the ability to expand or something along those lines. So I made just a couple of tweaks to the existing temporary storage container to kind of specify that it was residential and to keep it out of not only the right of way, but the vision triangle as well. And then the proposed new language is below, and that would go within that kind of list of temporary land uses directly adjacent to this one. This one would include enclosed lockable containers and other fully enclosed type situations that have a limited ability to be in the on the property. And so you'd have one container permitted on site for up to 60 days for every 6 months of total time period, outside of the required yard setbacks and vision triangle, all those types of things, and being placed on a hard surface, so it wouldn't be in the front lawn or something along those lines. And this, I think, is a good baseline. I didn't specify the exact dimensions like the residential one because I wanted to provide a little bit more flexibility, in particular because those containers and pods and all that kind of stuff can come in a lot of different shapes and sizes. And so I thought limiting the time period was probably the easier approach than trying to come up with whatever this theoretical number might be. But we could certainly explore that if you'd like. That's kind of the main difference between how the temporary residential one is oriented versus the non-residential one.
Judy?
I like putting a time frame on it, but 60 days in today's world, I'm just thinking like if I was doing construction at my house, it does take longer than 60 days. So if I moved all of my stuff, we'll put it in a pot. It might take me longer than 60 days to get back up and running in today's world, especially construction. I don't know if we need to go 3 months, but no months.
No, I mean, I like 60 days or 90 days, that's fine with me either way. But I think we should put in there with extensions available from the village administrator. So if we do happen to have another flood event, and PI is having to put some containers, the village administrator can say, well, we understand this, you're good to go.
I think, and I agree with that, but I think that's an automatic thing that emergency government, that they could suspend ordinances and stuff. But I hear what Judy's
But I
saying.
mean, in the building situation, saying,
Yeah,
okay, we didn't expect a fire to happen here and we lost our load of lumber or it got
Yeah,
stolen,
no.
we have to wait more. And you just have to call Bill and say, hey, we need to extend this and here's the reason. Bill says, yeah, no.
Right, I have no problem. I would go 90 days. I'm kind of with Judy on that. And then clearly the administrator would have the opportunity
To extend.
to extend, you know, there's.
But for Judy's example, that was construction on like your home. Wouldn't that be the temporary residential storage container then? Not
No,
the-
we have constructions going on businesses also.
Right, okay.
She just happened to use a home as an
So I was
example.
gonna say, because that's only 14 days according to this.
Right, I think both should be 90 days.
So these are storage purely. There is a construction, there is a separate construction one already in the ordinance that you can have for 365 days associated with your building permit itself.
Yeah, but that's for construction items and stuff. What she's saying is, I'm gonna redo the inside of my house. So I take my couches and everything, put them in a pod, or a couple pods, I wait for them to tear down the walls and rebuild it. She's saying it may be more than.
Okay.
The time.
You need more than.
Yes, the construction one is having an actual at sites of construction. I thought that was more tied to the construction people.
It says any structure or outdoor storage area designated for on-site storage during the construction period. But, so this would be, you know, if you didn't have a building permit and your son came home from college and he didn't have a place to live and he needed to store his stuff in a storage pod out front or something like that. For a business situation, it would be, maybe we're looking to move and we need to put some stuff in a certain area for a period of time or whatever it might be, or the school district example, you know, we don't have enough classroom space, we need this storage area right now. But I agree that we could increase the number of days if you guys are perfectly fine with that, from 60 to 90. I don't have any issues with that. That was just kind of a baseline start.
I mean, I think for the residential one, I think we have to be careful about extending that to 90 days or more than 30 days, because I think we'll get a lot of complaints, especially in this difficult place. The commercial I'm okay with, I think we've seen that it's more popular nowadays with all that's going on in the market. If you were to extend at least the temporary residential storage container for the resident, I suggest that it is.
And our interpretation of the construction would be broad enough to cover situations where you're remodeling and.
We wouldn't know the difference. I mean,
Well, yeah, because they'd have a building permit.
yeah, well, I mean, but they would have a building permit, but as far as what's in the container,
No, I'm just, I think Judy brings up a good point, because I've seen a lot of people do it. And I chose to leave my cars outside and fill my garage when we did it, but I have that option, so not everybody does. So I just want to be that we don't force people to be in violation of something. So if our interpretation of that construction is broad, I'm okay with that.
What kind of complaints have we received in the past couple of years? Any?
Well, there was I don't know what, there was a pod out on someone's driveway that I didn't formally do, but I heard about it was there for a while. I have no idea what it was there. But it must have done that.
And at the price of renting those, not too many people are probably going to. I mean, they're going to fill them on, get them empty as fast as possible.
Oh, okay.
I mean, they're not cheap.
I have no idea.
So, I mean, I guess the thing is that if what we have isn't broke, you know, I like the language that you have in here, Ben, but if what we're doing is working fine.
Well, but see, the whole reason you want something on here is when it doesn't work, you have some ability to
I
fix it.
understand it, right? But the only thing I see in here, unless you have temporary non-residential storage is new versus the residential storage, right?
Yeah, basically, we didn't have the non-residential storage covered.
Right.
And so that's why I proposed adding this, so we do have it covered to create some sort of rule related to it, yes.
Right, yeah, so I understand that, and the language is fine, so whatever you guys are happy with, I'm fine with it. Our system's not broke, let's not fix it. But the problem was not temporary non-residential storage.
Sure, I understand it, but I think when we're dealing with this, I think it's always good, just like with the B&B, we didn't have anything covering that. We should have something to cover these things when something happens. So what is reasonable to force somebody in a residential situation? That's.
So,
if you like 14 days, it's 14 days, but.
Right, so like in Judy's example, we're gonna go back to your example. So in Judy's example, if it's, let's say 60 days, all she's gotta go is go to the village office and say, hey, I need another 30 days because X, Y, or Z happened, right?
Yeah.
And that way we at least have something on paper that says we're gonna limit you to 60 days. But if you need an extension, not a problem, we'll give you an extension, we just need to know about why. That way, if there is a complaint, then they can go to the village office and Bill can have that conversation. I mean, either way is fine, I'm just throwing out the opposite argument.
So.
On the residential one, item E2 specifically talks about this is associated with a change of occupancy as defined by the word change in property ownership of that lease. So by reading that you're only allowed to use these things basically when it's someone's moving in or out, and not in a situation where it's just like, well, I needed extra space temporarily for whatever other reason.
No, because I think 8 covers the other reasons. Well, I guess, no, that just tells you the dimension.
No, I think, I would interpret it the same way. I think it's oriented right now to be associated with a moving situation.
That's all I read, is
Yeah,
basically,
you're
the
right.
only way you're allowed to have this at all is basically a
Change of
change of
occupancy.
ownership or a lease.
Unless you're doing construction.
Well, the construction is a separate thing, right, but under this ordinance.
So,
So for the personal storage during construction, I think we wanna make a fix or repair to the subsection F is where it falls under in the zoning ordinance. And simply can include some language that states construction equipment and or materials for an active construction project, including personal belongings on the property or something like that. That way we're limiting it to those specific circumstances. And whatever that number of days would be, I would imagine would reflect the building permit.
so you wanted to change the definition to include what?
Those personal belongings of property.
If you want to change that in the construction law, right?
Yeah, so the F, yeah, so it's on here, the subsection F, the temporary on-site construction storage. Right now, it says it includes any structure or outdoor storage area that's designed for the on-site storage of construction equipment and or materials for an active construction project. I think that was what you were looking at earlier. To me, I would interpret that does not include the personal belongings. So,
That's right, okay.
So, yeah, so I agree with that, that if you're doing a remodeling, you move your personal stuff out there, that's your mind. But then for E though, where I'm reading this is, the example of my son came home from college and we need temporary space to put a bunch of his stuff. I agree that that is allowed on current ordinance or with these changes. It's only, so E is only applies if you have a change in ownership or a change in lease.
Yeah, the second half of number 2, or I think it should just say the container shall be permitted on the property for up to 14 days and just end right there.
Yeah.
If we want people to just be able to have these for any reason, I don't really have an issue with that, as long as it's restricted to a certain length of time.
Right, no, I remember you saying, oh, that was a good catch.
I'm sorry, are you saying that under in the matrix, you get 5 temporary residential storage containers, and then for non-residential, they have 12?
No, that's the number.
Oh, yeah, that's just a reference number.
When you see the whole chart, this will be the 5th one in the
Thank
10th one.
goodness.
Yeah,
It's like the docs over by.
Is everybody comfortable with that?
And I said, you make the provision.
Leave it open.
The building's office and they can accept it. So we just want to know why we get it blank, this happened, it's already. Not to put more work on you, though.
we'll see when we complain. I'll give you a call.
Okay.
So, in the matrix itself, I didn't change the temporary residential storage because that's permitted in every district. But I did have a conditional use for the non-residential within basically all of the residential districts and downtown. Is everyone comfortable with that?
Yep.
Okay.
Any other feedback from that?
This is just more of a question, but mineral extraction doesn't have a P or a C in that column. Or the temporary non-residential one, is there a reason for that?
Probably just an error on my part. I would put it as a P as well.
Okay, yeah.
Anything else? Got what you need, Ben?
Yeah, thank you very much. And we will continue to work on the park zoning ordinance and then once we have that kind of narrowed down, we'll try to take the whole package all together based on what we talked about. So.
Sounds great. All right, Ryan, we don't need to take any action on that. All right, do I have a motion for adjournment?
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. All opposed, same. You're done, thank you.
This is the pledge of allegiance, or did we?
Yeah, we did that.
I walked in roll call, and then that was out of order, so I was confused.
No, we did,